Well, I'm actually primarily I'm a horse person that wanted to become a vet. So that's why I became a vet, because I was a horse nerd. And then eventually, when starting vet studies, I realized that there's so much subjectivity, not only in surfaces is one thing, but the first thing was really about looking at horse locomotion and so on. So I went into research about horse locomotion, and this is kind of an extension of horse locomotion. It has to do with how the horse interacts with the ground, and since there are literally ton of a load on each limb when the horse just moves around, and even more when they start jumping. And health is so important from our horses. Orthopedic health is so important. So of course the ground is a very, very important part of that, and that's why I'm interested in measuring the ground, to be able to help organizers, riders, suppliers of materials, maintenance people and so on, to find a good balance between actually allowing performance while still minimizing the risk of injury. That's a short story.
You are a bit of an engineer too.
I'm a hobby engineer. I'm a vet, but I need to be a hobby engineer too. If you work in biomechanics, you really need to know something about engineering. Absolutely.
And to what questions does this machine answer?
It answers it tells us about the functional properties of the ground. And functional properties, that is really what the horse feels when it moves over the ground. So even though we measure in engineering terms like accelerations in G's and newtons, force in newtons and so on, I translate that into 0 to 5 scale values of impact firmness, which is when the hoof just hits the ground, just as the hoof hits the ground. Cushioning, which is about actually cushioning the ton that I was talking about when the full weight of the horse is on the ground. The responsiveness of the ground, which has to do with elasticity. This is a ground that has a very nice elasticity, as you can see, and you can actually hear it more or less. And grip, of course, we all know that grip is something very important for horses. It should be enough grip so you don't slip, but the horses actually needs to have a short slide. It's part of the attenuation of horses that the hoof is allowed to slide a little bit in the ground. We don't want it to be too much grip. And then it's uniformity, which is all the previous four parameters, but how they are distributed over the area. So those 5 functional properties are very important, and that is what we measure and what we give as a feedback to the organizers here, to the riders, to the trainers, and to the maintenance people and so on, so they can relate to that. Maintenance people can adjust the surfaces so it gets just where we want it. Organizers know that it is where the riders want to have it, and so on.
Is this for inside arenas?
We can do outside arenas, we can do turf. Since we are mimicking a horse, we can do any surface that a horse will walk on.
Because it doesn't rain inside and it does rain outside, so does it take into consideration that ground might be...
So water is extremely important for the properties of the ground, and we do measure water content, but the functional properties in themselves, we measure them as they are, and then water is a way to adjust them so they get to where we want to be. The big difference, of course, is that indoors there is a lot of water here, but it's under control, and it makes it a bit easier than when you're outdoor, when you need to have a surface that is both able to drain a lot, but also to keep water. Indoors here we can have a surface that has very fine sand, so it keeps a lot of water. I can almost press water out of this, and this one can get too much water. It gets muddy if it gets too much. But that's not a problem because here there will never get any unexpected water, only planned water. But I mean, if I take it like this, you can really feel how it's elastic.
Juicy water.
Yeah. and that's why it makes such a nice cushioning in here, you know. So this is a nice surface.
Is this a new thing, or are there devices like this on the market?
Well, this is a research device, but there is it's not many of them, but we have some 10 of them in the world that are specific like that. There are other devices that you can measure ground properties, but there is nothing that mimics a horse like this one is doing.
So a good ground is sort of a holy grail, impossible, never there, always a bit of out of reach. So is there some surface materials that should be avoided?
Actually, I think after doing this for many years and many arenas, I've seen so many different materials that actually make a good surface, because the reason is that the maintenance is so extremely important. So with the right maintenance, many different materials can actually be a good surface. But then back to what is good. Good is only good for, in extreme cases, it's only good for one horse and rider, you know. Everybody will, depending on the locomotion pattern and the type of horse and what you're doing, how the horse has been trained before, it will be differently what is a very good surface. So I never talk about one good surface. I think that in this setting, with show jumping on 5-star level, we have thresholds that we like to be within. So not more or less than this impact firmness, not more or less than this cushioning. That's the way we have to practice it.
Do dressage riders and show jumping riders like different routes?
Not today. Actually, that's a good question, an interesting question. But today, the top dressage rider says that no, we want the same surface. I mean, if you would go back some 10 years or something like that, you would probably say that the dressage riders like it a little bit more fluffy, a little bit more soft. But today we need to have this very nice cushioning in the show jumping arenas, and the dressage riders like that too. We need to go over.
Yes.